relations between India and Russia are one of special and privileged strategic partnership, and the ongoing military contracts between the two sides will be maintained and in a number of cases will be taken forward in a shorter time, Defence Minister Rajnath Singh said on Tuesday. Singh, who was in Moscow on a 3-day visit at the invitation of the Russian Ministry of Defense to attend the 75th anniversary of the Victory Day parade, said his visit to Moscow was the first foreign visit from India of an official delegation after the COVID-19 pandemic. All our proposals have received positive responses from the Russian side. I am fully satisfied with my discussions, Singh said, indicating the timely delivery of the S-400 missile defense systems to India. Moscow was to begin the delivery of the system by the second half of next year. Russia has been one of India's key suppliers of arms and ammunition. However, it has been a long-standing grievance of armed forces that supply of critical spares and equipment from Russia takes a long time, affecting maintenance of military systems procured from that country. On this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyze the defense ties between India and Russia. Joining me on the program today are Dr. Vasily Kashin, Senior Research Fellow, National Research University, Russia; P.S. Raghavan, former ambassador; and Major General P.K. Chakravarti, retired defense expert. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. All right, Ambassador, let me start the program with you. Let's first analyze the key takeaways, really, from the Defense Minister Rajnath Singh's 3-day visit to Russia.
To start with, I think we should understand the significance of the visit of Defense Minister Rajnath Singh to Moscow at this stage. As you said, this is the first visit after, well, it's not quite after COVID, we are still in COVID. But the fact that he decided to make the visit on a very symbolically very important occasion. It was the 75th anniversary of the victory over Nazism. The Victory Day celebrations were to have been held on 9th of May, but got postponed because of COVID. The fact that he continued with this, you know, a number of Western leaders are not going there because of their standoff with Russia. So it was also a declaration of our support for Russia, of our friendship with Russia, and Indian military contingent also participated in the Victory Day parade. So all of this illustrates what you said at the beginning, the special and privileged strategic partnership that India has with Russia. The defense cooperation is a very important part of it. And as you said, the Raksha Mantri had the opportunity of discussing a number of important ongoing contracts. It's not that he signed a contract this time, but there is a very healthy order book already there. The order book is full. And he got a reassurance, if such was required, that the delivery will continue smoothly as planned, and wherever you want expedited delivery, Russia will do its best to do so, to meet the demand. Now, you also talked about spares and critical supplies. I'll come in probably a little later on that, but this for the moment, I think, to start the conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you for your initial remarks, and thank you for summing up really how and where the India-Russia relationship really stands, and also talking about the importance of the visit itself. All right, Dr. Kashin, this is where I'd like to bring you in. So what is it that makes the Indo-Russia bilateral relationship work or tick?
Thank you very much for having me. I think the basis of our relationship is that we have very close convergence of our interests, long history of trust, and we don't actually have any areas where our interests are going against each other. So it's a very harmonious relationship, and for Russia, defense technology export to India doesn't bring the same level of accompanying problems as the defense technology export to some other countries like China. We never had issues with intellectual property theft. We don't have security concerns while exporting defense or dual-use technology to India, and we see it as a way to boost their relations with an important power.
Okay, so it's a trusted relationship, it's a mutually trustful relationship, and that's what makes it tick, is what you're suggesting. All right, General, I'd like to bring you into the picture now. of what strategic importance is Russia to India? I spoke about the spares, I spoke about critical equipment, and let's not forget about the S-400 as well.
Well, I think it's already everybody has highlighted very correctly on the key issues which are there. Please don't forget also the naval components. We have a nuclear submarine already from there. There may be possibly one more coming. Our entire space program. You see, today we have got our astronauts training in Russia. Our entire nuclear energy program. I mean, say when you might have signed a deal with the United States, but today, when it comes to actually, the plants coming up, Ambassador Raghavan is very close to those plants belonging to Tamil Nadu. And I can put it to you that in everything where we need technology, having actually dealt with Russia, as a practitioner, who is getting into weapons, they have been outstanding. I'll just give you one small example. We have a 130 millimeter gun. Russia has used it in the Second World War. All right, we found it an excellent piece. So much we went to the secondary markets trying to buy it. When we couldn't, today we are using the chassis or what is known as the carriage of the gun, and we are putting a 155 barrel, and OFB is going to manufacture. Look at the levels at which technology. Look at the BrahMos missile. I mean, so who gives you, say, technology for a supersonic cruise missile? I remember meeting an American delegation, who came and they told us very clearly, one thing you must be very clear, you may sign all these agreements, and the BK is still left. You are not going to get technology so easily as you're getting from Russia. So make the best use of it. So therefore, as a military practitioner, if at all you want the strategic issues, or even as far as the army is concerned, I don't want to give the details of the equipment. It'll be it's a huge inventory, and I think it'll be best left for the next questions. But I would say our dependence on Russia is most important. I wish Russia could be a little considerate about the costs. Of late, we are finding, not that of late, in any discussion, the first discussion I started was with the Grad BM21, extended ammunition. Then we came on to Smirch. We found their pricings to be extremely high. Now we are stuck again with the rifle, which we are going to take, the Kalashnikov, which we are going to manufacture. I'll leave it there for the moment, and then we'll come on.
Okay, I'm going to take that issue up of the costing with Dr. Kashan in just a bit. But before that, Ambassador, of late, there have been several analysts, several watchers who have suggested that India has become far more closer to the United States, thereby drifting away from Russia. What do you make of that assessment, and do you believe that that is so?
To anyone who, and I keep hearing this as well, but to anyone who tells me that India is drifting away from Russia, I advise them to look at the world map. If you look at the map, there is Russia right on top of you, straddling the Eurasian landmass, bordering with China. The only country with which both Russia and India share borders is China. With Central Asia, with West Asia. You see, it is a presence. Even if you keep aside all the other bilateral, the content of the bilateral relationship that we have with with Russia, we need to keep in mind the fact that it's a close neighbor with whom we've never had any differences, as Dr. Kashan pointed out. So, from a strategic perspective, while you build relations with other countries which are important, the strategic partnership with the US is very, very important to us, but that should not mean drifting away from Russia. You can't drift away from Russia in the geographical sense, and in the strategic sense, you actually do continue to need Russia in a number of areas. If you want to maintain strategic autonomy in world affairs, if you want to maintain an independence of action, you do not do so by drifting away from one power and going to another power. You have to actually manage your relations with all powers, and particularly Russia and the US in this respect. There are so many elements of complementarity. There are so many elements in our bilateral relationship that you cannot get away from. Defense cooperation is one. Even today, with all the diversification that we have done of our defense acquisitions, you will see from the latest SIPRI, the Stockholm International Research Institutions, data that in the last 5 years, Indian imports of arms from Russia is 58%, which is a huge number. And you do not actually, people who say that now you have equipment coming from the US and France and Israel, etc., etc. Now, you don't change military partners like you change your soap or shampoo. It's a very deep relationship, which actually, even if you want to diversify out of, it takes a long time and it takes a lot of effort and money and so on. So it's not a practical proposition. Then you have hydrocarbons. Indian companies have invested something like $15 billion in Russia. Russia is the hydrocarbon superpower of the world. Russia has invested in India. So you have energy, you have defense, and you have a political relationship which dates back decades. It's not a relationship that you can drift away from so easily, and it's not wise to drift away from it either.
I think you summed it up really well. It's not wise to drift away from a relationship like this. I think that's the bottom line, really, and that's something that we need to make note of. Dr. Kashin, I have two questions for you. Let's first address the first one, that the point the general was making about, the cost and how the cost has been high, and also delivery of some of these spares and some of this equipment has been slow as well, and how that issue has to be addressed.
Yes, sir. Well, the pricing mechanisms are based on the commercial considerations. It's the result of process between the weapon system producers and Rosoboronexport, which is the chief exporter of the Russian arms. Of course, there is certain growth in prices for more advanced pieces of weapons, and then there is commercial logic. They are just trying to calculate how much they can get just on any other market. As for the spare parts problem, yes, there are traditional issues with the spare part supplies and technological maintenance of the Russian-produced systems, which these issues are not confined just to the defense sector. Sometimes it's happening to other Russian-produced equipment. In the recent years, the Russian government is taking special efforts to address these issues, and Russian defense and dual-use technology producers are boosting their maintenance and spare parts supply capabilities, trying to create service centers overseas and change the situation. So at least now the problem is absolutely recognized by the Russian authorities and the Russian companies, and they are working on it very actively.
Okay. All right. And my second question to you, Dr. Kashin, is the fact that, because of Western sanctions, there is a sense that Russia has been pushed closer towards China because of all the sanctions and because of what the West has done, really, as far as Russia is concerned. Now, considering the kind of relations that Russia has with China and with India, is it a difficult tightrope walk for the Russians, really, to maintain a balance between China and India?
Well, there is certain similarity between the position of Russia and India. There is basic reality of today's world, which is China-US rivalry. Because of very hostile US policies towards Russia, which actually started long before the Sino-US rivalry has erupted into acute phase in 2018, Russia is inclined to cooperate with China on a number of issues. Just like India, which because of its territorial disputes with China and other political differences with China, is cooperating sometimes with the United States. But both countries, Russia and India, are absolutely interested in maintaining their strategic autonomy, maintaining the ability to conduct independent foreign policy. From Russian part, first, we are not taking Chinese loans. Basically, Russian public debt is very low, so there is no ability of any country country to influence our policy using the debt mechanisms. Second, we are maintaining Chinese presence in the Russian economy at the level which is safe. Even if we take such areas of technology as 5G networks, we have excellent and very close cooperation with Huawei, but still we have also presence of Ericsson in the country. So in times like that, I think we are facing similar problems. We need to be very careful. Of course, Russia will always have very friendly and special relations with China because we are neighbors, and we should absolutely trust each other. It doesn't mean that our foreign policies are 100% aligned. They are closely aligned if we are dealing with United States aggression and hegemonism, but it's not affecting our relationships with other important partners.
Okay, all right. Since we're here, and since he spoke about the issue of spares and equipment, General, how much of an issue is it really as far as the slow pace of delivery of the equipment and spares are concerned for the for critical supplies as far as the military is concerned?
Well, as far as the military is concerned, militaries have a way of, tiding over all difficulties. We are brought up in a way in which we can, somehow tide over a problem. And this is built inbuilt in our very organization. If you take a squad, the number of aircrafts that you have, you always cater that some percentage will be under maintenance, some percentage would be undergoing some repair, there would be spares problems. Similarly, you take a battery of guns. You'll have today 6 guns in a battery. You would always plan at least 4 would remain with you. Okay. Similarly, I can come on to tanks and various other, including the naval point. But the fact remains that spares are an ongoing thing. It's something that it keeps happening and you keep on this thing. And the more you use your equipment, particularly, see now in our case, the equipment is being used in rugged, mountainous and high altitude terrain. Once you take it to terrain, you're taking the tanks, for example, over there, say at heights of 15,000, 15,500, and you see the conditions in which you'll say, of course, it's cold in Russia. But believe me, I've been in Russia and I've been what you call also over here. It's a different environment to be where we are fighting today. Even the Chinese are finding it tough. I find the way they have lined up their, shall we say, tanks, or they have lined up their guns. Nobody does it. We don't do it that way. We dig in, we put in, you don't find any photographs anywhere. The fact remains that when you deal with equipment, you have to care for them, particularly in these high altitudes, because the temperatures are very low. Then your what you call the ability, that is the amount of oxygen available. After all, to start anything, you need a little bit of oxygen. The oxygen availability is this thing. Often, I do remember certain tanks and APCs, we used to heat up the engines and use fire for it. So therefore, we now have, of course, very advanced systems from Russia, but all these advanced systems need maintenance, and often they need spares at a very high rate, you see, because what we have started doing is, which is something great, we replace a tank engine in the field now. We don't take it back right to what you call Avadi or somewhere, because by the time you reach Avadi, everything is over. All right. So better to replace it at the battlefield, at the point. Okay, you want a replacement at Galwan, please do it at Galwan. It's a forward repair system, and this is something which the Indian Army started, and we have done it. Well, the Russians have been at it. It's not that they don't come up. They supplied the Smerch to us. I remember they said, you take us anywhere, we will be there. I would rather put it, we learned all this from Israel. That's the country that taught us that you're required to do everything where you are. You operate a human being there, you do a CAT scan there, and our equipment, therefore you need it. But at the same time, sir, you do need the space, you do need everything in greater quantity and possibly in greater speeds. At this, I would say, since I worked with BrahMos, let me tell you, wherever Rosenboro export comes in, things become very difficult. It's a bureaucracy within a bureaucracy. Now, this is my personal opinion and dealings. In BrahMos, believe me, the Russian ambassador deals with us directly. And we deal with Tula and all these companies. We have aircrafts landing with the spares. There are no problems. But moment we get Rosenboro export, it's a bureaucracy within a bureaucracy. This is my view. The Russian friend can definitely clarify. Ambassador Raghavan would be knowing much more than I know. But I'm talking to you practically. You remove Rosenboro export and let us deal directly with the companies. I can tell you most of the problem gets sorted out.
Okay, I can see the ambassador has a smile on his face and clearly wants to say something. Go ahead, ambassador, the floor is yours.
No, I must say that during my recent tenure in Moscow, what the general just now mentioned engaged a lot of my attention. There is a lot of discussion that we did with the Russians on this subject, including incidentally on the subject of cost that he mentioned, on the higher cost. Now, what we got recently was also on the basis of the same kind of complaints that the general mentioned, an acceptance by the Russian government that after a platform has been sold, its maintenance and spares, the Indian consumer, the user, can directly deal with the OEM of the spares and the components. Now that actually made life much simpler, so that you cut out the middleman Rosenboro export that he was talking about. It also enabled a certain amount of predictability in cost, because there were price catalogs that were given, and therefore now, so to a certain extent there are solutions to this, but I want to say that in India-Russia defense cooperation, the next major step forward should be to get Russian manufacturers to come to India, to invest in India, to make joint ventures. And Dr. Kashan mentioned this as well. And we need to promote more and more of this so that our need for critical components should be met by factories in India, Russian factories in India, Russian Indian factories in India, rather than our going back. Because also, there is a bureaucracy involved, there are customs issues involved, there are export control issues involved. The Russian system is very strict in all these matters. So you actually avoid a lot of these delays. And price is another issue. You know, actually what we discovered when we went deeper into this price issue is that many of these components are manufactured just for us. As the general said, you know, our equipment is used much more, and therefore the turnover of spares is much greater. The Russian armed forces do not have that much of a turnover. So though the same equipment may be in the service of the Russian armed forces and the Indian armed forces, our requirement of spares is much greater. And therefore they don't manufacture sufficiently. So since we are the biggest consumers, even including Russia, I think we should be the biggest manufacturers as well. So this should be the next step in the India-Russia defense cooperation. And that, by the way, will make it much easier for Russia to export the same components to other countries where its weapons platforms are functioning. So This is a win-win solution for India and Russia, which I think we should take forward. There are, incidentally, this is going on, talks are going on. And the Kalashnikovs that the general was talking about, we already have a joint venture where assault rifles are going to be manufactured near Amethi by the ordnance factories. I think that is a template that can be refined and improved and taken forward for an entire range of components, so that eventually you should have repair, maintenance, and overhauling of Russian weapons platforms entirely in India. This should be our next objective in defense policy.
All right, taking the discussion forward now, Dr. Kashan, you know, as far as the relationship is concerned, are there any areas that need special attention, do you think?
I think we need to boost our military-to-military ties, because I think we need to match the progress which is achieved in developing this kind of ties with the Chinese. And that means conducting probably more sophisticated exercises, more military exchanges, and more training, so we have better understanding of each other's capabilities. I think this should be the main focus now, together with the traditional technological cooperation.
Okay, all right. And General, as far as the best way forward is concerned, what would you say that would be?
best way forward is that, see, both with Russia, the whole issue is that they are very, very friendly. They're extremely good. But when it comes to issues, I think I agree with him that we have more exercises, more interactions. I'll say exercises is one bit. The more you interact at a military level, the problems can be dealt with directly. So the more interactions we have, particularly between our commanders, between our troops, you'll find that they would be able to understand, and possibly, as Ambassador Raghavan said, they would understand that what are our requirements. I think anticipation would be much better if they understand, okay, that this are the conditions they are in. Because when you exercise, you are able to talk, shall we put it, in language which may not be necessarily ornamental. It would be language which would be military. It would be language which we military people understand with each other, where we can explain to them all these issues. So I do see a point of better exercises, better interactions, and at lower levels. I must say that, see, whenever we went to Russia and we went back or came back trained, whether it's with the T-90s, whether it's with the T-72s, or whether it's with the Smerch, whether it's Sukhoi pilots or now our astronauts, you'll see that the Russians have understood our views very, very well. They have modified the equipment as per our requirement. I do agree there should be greater interaction between the armed forces and the Russian armed forces and their manufacturers. I think once we interact with their armed forces, the manufacturers automatically come in. And the Indian embassy,
Right.
obviously.
Okay, sure. All right. And Ambassador Raghavan, close the show for us with your concluding remarks.
Thank you. Well, I think as all the guests on your show today have agreed, our defense cooperation is vibrant. It is very important. It does require fine-tuning, but every relationship requires fine-tuning as we go along. I think we are on our way, and we can marry our defense cooperation with the Make in India objective of India to mutual benefit. And I think that's what we should be heading for in the future.
All right. With that, then, I'll call it a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. What's coming out of this discussion is that the defense ties between India and Russia are in a good place. It has been a historical relationship and a strong and a strategic relationship that is only going to go to newer heights, is what the panelists are suggesting. Of course, there is need to fine-tune it a little bit, and there are some issues that need to be addressed as we take this relationship forward. We hope that all those issues will be addressed in the near